Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and I am joined today by Tony Haggerty, who's always on a Friday, Tony. So, in many ways, I'm joining you for the Friday Bulletin.
I wouldn't go that far. Yeah.
Well, the Monday show's different because you've got the whole kind of weekend to go through, and we've been talking a lot of domestic football on a Monday. On a Friday, you guys have had the opportunity to look back on the European endeavours this season. And I'm pretty sure that, there's been some good, some bad, and a wee bit of ugly mixed in as well. But today, it's our task to do that. So this doesn't come with a government health warning. There is going to be some criticism. It's not negative. We were absolutely rotten over the two legs. We're going to have to try and figure out why that is the case and look ahead to whether or not Ange Postecoglou is the man to make us a European force again. Now, what does a European force mean, Tony, for Celtic now? I mean, I don't think anybody on this show reckons we're ever going to win the Champions League. So what does a European force look like in your mind as a Celtic fan?
A European force to me would be getting to the latter stages of European competition, winning knockout ties. I mean, it's a startling statistic that Celtic haven't won a knockout tie since 2004. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mark O'Neill's team. Mm-hmm. No wonder that team's revered.
Was it the Barcelona game, the 1-0 game?
Yeah, Alan Thompson. Yep. And, no wonder that team's revered, because the more you look back, the more you think, my goodness, that Celtic team went toe-to-toe with the best that European football had to offer. Mm-hmm. I know it's not green-tinted specs. I'm just sort of saying, since then, Celtic have been pretty abject in Europe, haven't they?
They have, and we've just added another name to the list over the last few years, and we have Bodo Glimt in amongst a group that includes Legia Warsaw, Maribor, Malmo, AEK Athens, Cluj, Ferencváros and Midtjylland. So we've actually added two teams to that list this season.
I'm keen to stress that this is not on Ange, okay? This is 8 months into a rebuild. Mm. European football it comes the same time every year, but it was far too soon for Ange, because he was moulding a team, and he's still moulding a team to win the title and then take it from there. Mm-hmm. But he has to play European football, and he made a point of saying he was competitive and everything, because he took Australia to the World Cup, and he said his aim was to win the World Cup. So, that's the vibe you're getting from the manager. So, I wasn't worried level in every tournament. Mm-hmm. And if that's the third European trophy that's on offer, I still wanted to win it. I don't buy this kind of, it'll help us win the league stuff and all that. I want to be competitive and everything. And I think it's the nature of the way they've been put out by Bodo Glimt. And I'm allowing for the fact that they've been building for the best part of 3 or 4 years, and they've got a fluid system and a manager and players that understand everything. And I touched on it last week. And it probably irks Ange a bit, because he probably sees a bit of Celtic in Bodo Glimt. Yeah. And the way they play, I said, through the looking glass, through the microscope, so he wants to get to that point and be better, even better than Bodo Glimt. So I can get he must be up to that. But we weren't and aren't good enough at this moment in time to cope with European football. And we gave a fist of it against the likes of Betis when they came to Celtic back. We had it in flashes when it all clicked together. But the minute you saw that lineup, you were thinking to yourself, well, my first thought was he would never admit it publicly, but
he sold you a dummy.
Aye, the Europa Conference League was sacrificed on the altar of potentially winning the Scottish Premiership. Now there's pressure on Ange and the team to go and do that now. Because the only way, and you talk about how can Ange transform Celtic back into European force, is to get access to the money that comes with being in the group stages and to bring in better quality players. Because I think we saw last night that as much as we've brought in some top-notch players, we're still lacking in the quality department in various areas of the pitch.
Various areas, because once you start to dig into the depth of the squad, Tony, right into the second layer, in various areas of that park. Now, thankfully, we've not had to do that often in the goalkeeper department, because I think that's one of the worst served areas that we have in terms of the depth of the squad. I'm not confident that Scott Bain could step into the European arena and, be a stand man for Celtic. Joe Hart last night, Tony, was the difference between 2 and 4-0. It would have been a total pasting had it not been for Joe Hart.
Very much so, and you're loath to criticise Joe Hart at all. Nitpicking with Joe Hart about maybe not coming off his line for, corner kicks and free kicks that come into the 6-yard box and stuff. That's maybe the way he likes it, and maybe puts his trust in defenders that could maybe defend that better. But I've got no real criticism of Joe Hart, to be perfectly honest. It's nitpicking when you're saying that about things that you want to, to have a go at Joe Hart about. But yeah, last night he saved Celtic in the first half, certainly, from being at least 2 or 3 down. And I don't care what kind of team Ange sets out, and I'm sure he'll be the most frustrating and disappointed he'll be. You must be able to carry out a game plan for more than 7 minutes. The deflected goal at Parkhead, we said, was maybe going to be crucial, but 7 minutes in, the tie's finished. It's gone.
Yeah.
The European team's gone. Right? It's gone. Any semblance of a comeback, and then you saw the starting 11, you just thought, no feeling this here. You saw Beaton's reaction as for a coin toss to the ref. Oh, it's a bit cold, eh?
Didn't fancy this. It's a bit chilly.
That's what body language said to me.
Right. How chilly was it behind the goal? This is the point Kevin made last night.
That's your skipper.
Right.
I tell you who were shortchanged. The fans that went. The 400, 500 Celtic supporters that went. And I tell you right now, I salute them and I clap them, because they went there hoping that they will still be on course to booking tickets for Tirana, Albania, and thought, and they'd been led to believe. The manager himself said it's only half time, but he said it there. Maybe sold a dummy with the team that was picked, and they must have felt shortchanged.
So, in the next press conference, Tony, where you go in to represent ACSOM, is that the question to Big Ange? You're a braver man than me if it is. Now, you're talking about the fans.
I'm not having a go at the manager per se. I understand completely why he did it, but there's now pressure to go to Easter Road and win on Sunday. With 11 games to go, and now does he just play his strongest 11 on paper for those 11 games if he can, barring injuries? Because they've put themselves under a bit of pressure now. But
they have.
And I'm not criticising the manager in any shape or form, because where Celtic are at this moment in time, I would have bitten your hands off in June for where they are. It's just the manner of the way they seem to exit Europe. It is the same bleep, different year, and has been for 18 years, hasn't it?
We're not learning the lessons, Tony, and we're going to go through this in such a way where it isn't just a moaning session today. So thanks everybody for getting involved, because what I like to do is look at a game and think, how can we improve that? How can we avoid that? Because you mentioned the goals. The goals are avoidable when you watch them back. But you brought up the fans, so let's start with a positive, right? So as I mentioned yesterday a few times, and as you would have seen on the television at 66 minutes, we had a couple of representatives at the game, not covering the game on a media kind of level, just as fans. Natasha and David were there. And we've had reports back during the day yesterday, Tony, about their journey, and this morning about the conditions. So it's interesting that you mentioned that near Beaton was feeling a wee bit chilly, because when you consider how the fans get there against how the board members and the team gets there, it's two completely different kind of sets of standards when it comes to travel arrangements. So Natasha and David and the rest of the Hoops fans that were travelling were in Trondheim for a spell, thinking to themselves, we're not going to get to this game because of the weather conditions. And then there were a number of failed, what do you call them? I was going to say lift-offs. You know what I mean, right? When an aeroplane goes into the sky. That's it. I should know that. My missus was a air hostess for about 17 years. Anyway, I'm not very well travelled, mate. You know, I'm from the outskirts of Fife, and you know, we didn't get out much. Anyway, so eventually they get to the stadium, and then there's a distance to travel from the aeroplane, obviously, to the stadium, and apparently it was like, you know, an ice rink. And there was piles of snow, and there was, you know, it was really dangerous. And then the one turnstile that had been photographed by JP Taylor a couple of days ago that everybody was trying to get into was on a slope. So they're on a slidey slope. And if one falls, it's going to have a domino effect. And the reports we've received this morning is that it was actually, you know, the fans felt as though they were in danger. Finally, they get into the stadium, Tony. The ticket wasn't even, you know, there's a barcode on it, but it wasn't scanned. And apparently it was in such a format that it could easily have been forged. And there was a bit of overcrowding apparently behind the goals as well. So that's what the Celtic fans are doing to be there. And it takes me back to that banner. We're all out for you. You need to be all out for us. And regardless of what the game plan is, regardless of what the lineup is, what you want to see, Tony, is a representation of Celtic on that park. Because the fans are representing us off the park in the terracing behind the goal. And that's the biggest disappointment for me, because it wasn't a dead rubber. No. You know, it wasn't a dead rubber game last night.
The manager told us after the first leg it wasn't a dead rubber because he didn't think they were capable of playing as badly again. And he kept, and he kept faith with the same midfielders that had let him down, and Rogic and O'Reilly. I keep trying to stop myself from saying Orogic. You know what I mean?
The Orogic thing's something we'll talk about, by the way, because it's not working.
Yeah, well, you know, so I don't know if it was bloody minding this on Ange's part to say, you know, I'll give them another shot to redeem themselves. But, you know, you and I had more touches than the two of them, you know, sitting in my house in East Kilbride, and you in the studio in Dalkeith. So I'm like you. I just think the fans, when they saw that team, their hearts would have sank, because they're there hoping that it's one of those great comebacks against a very well organised and decent Norwegian team. And I was just baffled by it. That wasn't a Celtic team that was set out to mount a comeback in my eyes. It was a Celtic team set out just to contain, and if they could get themselves back into it, so be it. But it wasn't a rip roaring, free scoring, never boring Celtic team going all out to win 3-0, was it?
No.
And any semblance of a game plan that you had's ripped up after 7 minutes. And you know, you don't like to point fingers, but I mean, was Liam Scales no watching Solbakken in the first leg? You know, shows him on his right foot. Just like, you know, or what is he, left foot? Was it his left?
It was, and he's just placed it beyond Hart's right. Yeah.
You know, so you sort of say, well, you know, that's it. I mean, I genuinely, and your thoughts after that were, let's not get a doing.
Damage limitation at that point.
Yeah,
my notes, 9 minutes, game over. And yeah. I looked at that because you're right about Scales. Because I'd made the point yesterday, my team had Taylor in it. Taylor came under more criticism than anybody else, I think, after the first leg. Mm-hmm. It was torn to pieces. People are then doubting whether or not he can make that step up to the European level. That's a debate to be had, I guess, between now and next season as well. But my take on that would be to play him again, because he's not going to learn, is he, if he doesn't come up against the same threat. Obviously, Scales comes in, and I was looking at that goal. Yes, both goals, actually. Here's my first point. Both goals are avoidable, Tony.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's down to the quality of opposition. I think it's down to poor defending on our part. And by the way, I think Bodo Glimt are a good side, and I think they will progress beyond the next round. I'm not sure how far they'll go. But we were in a situation where we're in possession of the ball yesterday. We're in the first 10 minutes of the game, and the ball's at the feet of Stephen Welsh, who incidentally is one of the best passers of the ball if you're going to look at the figures in the Celtic team, right? So playing balls out of defence is his forte. He plays a hospital pass to Beaton, who slips, which is unfortunate, and they lose possession. And from that transition, where we're basically comfortable with the ball, Tony, we can't recover. Before you know it, it's 5v3. And Scales is tracking back. He actually done really well to get back. If I'm going to give him any kind of positive, he done really well to get back into that position. Then he failed to actually deal with it. But we were 5v3. And I was watching it last night, and it was inevitable at that moment that Beaton slips. It was inevitable this is going to be a goal, because how often have we seen it, Tony, in European football, that sucker punch, that, you know, and they're so clinical and they're so decisive in that scenario. You just don't expect them to miss in that scenario, barring an incredible save by Joe Hart, which on that occasion he was unable to stop that one. You look at the second goal, and this again is my point about the quality of the opposition. The ball's played into their wide left channel. Tony Ralston leaves the guy in acres of space, and I've been a massive champion of Tony Ralston. But the space he gives that guy means that he's on the back foot straight away to try and stop the cross coming in, Tony, which he fails to do. When the cross comes in, the goal scorer is completely unmarked. Who's his man? Near Beaton, the man who's complaining about being cold at the beginning of the game. So I look at the two goals and I think, right, if you're going to look at how do we avoid a night like last night, the first thing is these two things are avoidable, Tony, because they're poor goals to lose.
Of course they're avoidable. And also, you touched upon it about being clinical. Celtic scored one goal in the whole European run. I think it was the one in Betis, wasn't it? Where Forrest has flicked it and we've managed to counter-attack and score. I think, was it Jota that scored it?
Jota scores at the back post, yeah.
Yep. That's the one clinical piece of football Celtic have played in the whole European run, where it was a classic counter-attacking goal.
Yeah.
How is it that Celtic can only produce that once, yet other teams can do it on a repeated basis, and a lot of teams certainly do it against Celtic on a repeated basis in one game? Yeah, in all the games in Europe that we've played, Celtic have produced kind of one counter-attack. Maybe you could argue that Kyogo's against Alkmaar, where Alson's pass were bad in the square ball in, you know, was another piece of clinical finishing. But, you know, teams seem to be able to do it to Celtic at will. And you say both, and by the way, both of those goals were preventable. But then they carved us open a couple of other things. You had Joe Hart to thank for it not being 2 or 3 at the interval. That was the one thing positive that Celtic can take in the first half. But, you know, you look at guys that's in it, you don't want to turn it into any kind of witch hunt, but they're being asked to step up to the plate, make a name for themselves. It doesn't matter what stage it is in Europe or whatever competition. It's a big game. You won't be a big game player. You know, we trust you. And then you look around and you think, well, maybe the quality that we think we have isn't as good as we think, because domestically you don't see many flaws, but you get exposed at any level in Europe. I think Bodo Glimt were a tidy team. Yeah. You know, they were a well-organised, well-drilled, well-disciplined, but my goodness, they were clinical on the counter, and they ganged up on you, and they were, you know, they knew their jobs.
How rapid was that though, Tony, from winning possession to a 5v3 position? You know? And
they did a number on Celtic, and they did their homework, and I get back to it, I don't, not having a go at Ange per se, because I think this was further down the line in terms of the rebuild. The rebuild is to get a team capable of winning the title, to get access to riches, which then gives you that money that you can bring in a higher quality of player. I see all that, but you have to play in Europe. It's a demand at Celtic Football Club, and he knew that himself. But he admitted it at the end in his interview. We weren't good enough.
No,
and we aren't good enough.
He said that after the Wraith Rovers game as well. You know, he said that is nowhere near the standard that he expects us to perform at. You've made a really good point there when we're talking about the defence, and we're talking about the depth of the squad. You look at that defence, best defence in Scotland. We keep reminding ourselves of that. But if you remove Cameron Carter-Vickers and Juranovic from that defence, Tony, it's a very ordinary defensive lineup. You just remove those two players from it. And what worries me about it is that we only own one of those players. So that leads us into the discussion around the importance to retain the services of Cameron Carter-Vickers, because you remove him from that central defensive area and we look very ordinary. In fact, probably verging on mediocre in that area. So you've got to retain his services. And what I was talking about yesterday, we keep going on about the £35-40 million bounty in the Champions League. But the question is, what is it for? Right. Is it so that we can become the richest club in Scotland or maintain that kind of accolade that we're the richest club in Scotland? Is it so that we can dominate Scottish football again like we did for 9 years? Or is it so that we can actually become a European force? And I think that is the big question. So the question was thrown at the AGM at Ian Bankier, wasn't it? And his response was, it was almost as if he just rolled over, because he was like, you can't expect to compete against the Barcelonas and the PSGs of this world. But look at the list of teams I've read out in this podcast. Legia Warsaw, Maribor, Malmo, Athens, Cluj, Ferencváros, Midtjylland, Bodo Glimt. We're not talking about Barcelona and PSG here. We're talking about failing against that level of team.
Yeah, but didn't Sheriff Tiraspol win in the Champions League from Moldova earlier this season? I'm sure they won a group match for the first...
They did. They beat Real Madrid.
First representatives from Moldova to win or claim a big scalp. So I'm not by that at all. I look, and people can hate me for saying this, but I look over the other side of the city at a team that's got to the last 16 of European competition past 3 years. It can be done.
Yeah.
And they don't have the resources that Celtic have, do they?
No.
So
they certainly do not, Tony.
So as much as you might be loath to admit that's a pretty good feat. And the scalp they took last night, whilst they're not the Dortmund of old, they're sitting second in the Bundesliga.
It still sends the ripples throughout European football, Tony.
So, they got, you have to give them credit for that result, because it's a pretty decent result in Europe, you have to say that. But so, my point is, if Rangers can do that, then why aren't Celtic? And you ask, how can Ange transform Celtic back into a European force? Martin O'Neill did it, but he also did it by spending money.
Yes.
There is no getting away from it. You have to, and Ange has spent some money and he's brought in quality, but he needs more money to bring in better quality in order to transform Celtic back into a European force. Because the fans are sick of it, Paul.
Yeah, you are. If you want to look outside of the Scottish football bubble, Tony, and last night after the game, a lot of comments were, right, okay, would you rather we 1-2 went through extra time and were knackered on Sunday? So there is a train of thought, and I'm not saying that I'm right and that train of thought is wrong, Tony, but there is a train of thought that, you know what, we shouldn't really have been concentrating on Europe this season in any case. But then I ask the question again, what's the bounty for? Is it just so that we can lord it up domestically, or do we want to make progress in Europe? I think as fans, I can say as a Celtic fan, I would love us to perform better in Europe. So if you win a £35 or £40 million bounty, yeah, it's going to have a knock-on effect domestically because it's going to stretch that gap even wider, or it should do. But I also want to see us making progress in Europe, Tony. Are you of the same view? And what do you think the board's view is on that?
You're measured on success in Europe. That's how you make your name as a club, not domestically. I mean, Celtic's name is known throughout Europe because of what? 1967 and all that. And the team that got to Seville. And it wasn't... And I think that's why that Martin O'Neill team was revered. It's because everybody said they put us back on the European map. Celtic was in the psyche and it was in people's conscience again, and everybody saw how many fans they took to Seville, 80,000 that travelled, and everything that came with it, and the prestige of getting there. I'm like you, I want to see that again. And see if you're sitting on that board and you don't want to see that again, then go back to what we were saying last season, then you're not fit for purpose. I don't enjoy watching Celtic lose 5-1 over two legs to a Norwegian team, or any team it's just not an enjoyable experience. We were at the Bayer Leverkusen game, and and people were saying, "Oh, they're a top-notch Bundesliga side." They ripped us apart at home.
We were you and I after that game were really frustrated, Tony.
And people were telling me we played really, really well,
yeah,
fine margins and all that. We could beat for nothing. And I sat there and I'm like, I don't enjoy this. You should be stung to the core if you're a Celtic supporter getting turned over 4-0 at home by any European team. And I get that they're quality and stuff, but why can't Celtic be quality? Why can't they get results in Europe? I'm sick, as I say, that's the last decent European side that we all watched, Martin O'Neill's team, for those that are old enough to remember that, and enjoyed it. And the reason we enjoyed it? Because we went out against the likes of Lyon, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Juventus, thinking we could win. No, could we get a result? Thinking we could win, or exactly, they're thinking we're not getting beat. They all came to Parkhead in life with nothing. No team fears coming to Parkhead now. If anything, they want to come to Parkhead to sample the atmosphere and to do a number on you. Yeah, back then, very few teams came and got a result at Celtic Park, and I don't know what's happened in the 18 years. Well, you do know what's happened. That's an exaggeration, but I think we have the right manager taking us in the right direction. Of course, I do, and I'd love to see what would happen if they give this guy money to bring in quality. But it now makes winning this title all the more crucial, because if he doesn't win the title, then will they sort of withdraw and say, well, we can't spend the money we wanted to, and that halt put the brakes on the kind of rebuild. So but also I'd love to see Ange with a massive treasure chest, as they call it, or transfer kitty, because I think he would bring in quality players, because I think he knows what he needs to take us to that next level.
Yeah. And he's shown that in the transfer market so far, Tony. I'm going to throw it out there because we've mentioned it a few times, and my take on it was you always beg the question, how far away are we from making an impression in Europe? What do we need to do? And like you say, yeah, of course it comes down to money. But if you look at the 9 in a row era, and I had a discussion with Colin Watt some time ago about this, if we wanted to do something in Europe, we could have kept certain players longer and married them up, Tony, with a team that could have made an impression in Europe. This is fantasy football stuff, but it's not really if you've got a different transfer strategy. So instead of having a policy where you bring someone in like Van Dijk and Dembele and Edouard and Wanyama, etc., and you don't want to turn it around for the finances within 3 years, because if you make inroads into Europe, you're going to make that money anyway, the sell-on, etc. So if a team consisting of Forster, Lustig, Tierney, Van Dijk, Denayer, Wanyama, Edouard, Dembele, Sinclair, Roberts and McGregor was to take the field at some point in the last 10 years, would they do something in Europe? Now, as I say, it's all subjective, it's all fantasy. But what I would say is, looking at that team there, that is a quality side, right? And they're players that have all come through the gates at Celtic Park, and they've all spent time at Celtic Park 2 or 3 seasons at the very least. So we have a strategy where we bring a player in, we sell them for profit, we bring them in. And as we continue to do that, and you look at the players at the moment in that Celtic side who might be part of that model, I'm thinking Abada. I don't want him to leave within 3 years, but he seems like a prime example. He comes in at 19, Tony. He plays on the European stage. He gets English interest, and he's gone, and we, get 10 times the amount that we paid for him or whatever it is, right? But instead of doing that, rip that up and build the team. So we're at a stage now where last night showed we don't have the depth that perhaps we thought we had. We're speaking about it domestic. Abada drops out, you bring in Forrest. Well, I see a big drop-off now. Jota drops out and you bring in, let's say, Johnston. That's a massive drop-down in standard. And I think in the centre-half area, Carter Vickers drops out, the defence looks ordinary. So if we look at the team that we have at the moment and actually strengthen it, what is that going to take? And I spoke about this yesterday. Cameron Carter-Vickers and Jota, what are they going to cost? 12, 13 million quid in transfer fees plus wages. But they're already at the club. And you and I both know that you need another 3 or 4 players to really get to that level whilst retaining everybody else that's in the squad currently. other than the guys that are on the fringes that you want to move on. But what does the 3 or 4 players over and above Jota and Carter Vickers cost to make that difference, to take that step up? And are the Celtic board prepared to spend £25 million in the summer if we win the league? That's the big question.
Well, they're going to have to be prepared to spend that kind of dough in the summer, because I think that's what Ange wants. Mm-hmm. And I stress that I know we are in a rebuild. I've already said that European football was a step too far for Ange this season, but he had to embrace it. And he said we were going to be as competitive as possible. We've tried to be as competitive as possible, but our limitations saw us fall into the third-tier competition, and now we're out of that. I get all that, but I think in an ideal world, that's what Ange is trying to say to this board. In order for me to transform Celtic and take them back to being a European force, then I need financial help. I need to hold on to the players that we've already got for 2 or 3 seasons, and I also need quality on top of the quality that we've got. And the ones that you saw last night that came in and failed to do a job. And in Ange's ideal world, Celtic will be going in a different direction at the end of this season, because he always says he envisages players, or his transfer modus operandi is players that he knows can fit his system. So he's working on that already. So he has to be saying to the likes of Michael Nicholson, look, this is who I want, this is what they'll cost, are you prepared to let me do that? And if they're prepared to let him do that, then fine. You can then sort of judge Ange European record in the competitions we're in from next season onwards. But we call it as we see it, in terms of we're commenting on the games on a game-by-game basis, because this is what we do on this pod. And last night was just pretty abject. You can't get away from it. And there's a collective responsibility of the team and the manager and his team selection. And I'm just not one of those people that say we should just, Europe's an afterthought. I always want to be competitive in Europe. I understand, for the purpose of this season and at the stage in the rebuild that we're at, that the manager, who publicly wouldn't say it, has maybe prioritised winning the title this season over Europa Conference League glory. And I get all that, I really do. But I still think there's prestige in going far and getting to the latter stages of European competition, whatever it may be. People can disagree with that, but there's prestige and a pride and an honour in getting to. And I think maybe in years to come, people will look at the Europa Conference League as a third-tier tournament. But to be the first name on that, I thought was the most highly prestigious thing. And being in a final on the 25th of May would have been a highly prestigious thing. I wrote flippantly last night on the Celtic Way that, that Celtic fans, took great delight in taunting the Rangers supporters with, you'll be watching the Bill when we're in Seville back then, but there was certainly no, you'll be watching WrestleMania when we're in Albania this year. So that was a kind of line I used, right? So I was emphasising the point that the difference between then and then, but I think the Celtic supporters would have loved to go to Albania, and I just feel that it was a kind of meek surrender last night, wasn't it?
Out with a whimper. Is WrestleMania still a thing?
I don't know.
I'm thinking Ultimate Warrior and Andre the Giant here, Tony.
The only thing I could think of that rings with Albania.
I like it.
Or Disney Mania or something, so I just something like that. But I was being flippant, but the point was that the larger point was that Europe's never an afterthought for someone like myself, ever.
Or those fans that travel, like that was the opening point. Tony, last night, right, you've got the board who were at the game, whoever the representatives who were at the game, because there would have been some, getting a nice couple of bottles of red on the way through the airport, sitting on a nice chartered flight, getting the baffies on. That's not how the Celtic fans travel. So it means a lot to each and every one of the people who were at the game last night, and they certainly don't want meek performances, and they don't want no ambition in Europe. I mean, it might be easy for someone like Bankier to say, it's just beyond us now. The game's moved on. Celtic fans don't want to hear that. We want to hear what your plan is. Now, rather than say, it's moved on, why not? Why not test it? Why not say, well, you know what, we're going to buy Carter Vickers, we're going to buy Jota, and we're going to buy another 3 players of that ilk, because you add that to the team that Ange has got presently, and then you think to yourself, prepared, up to tempo, up to speed with Ange's philosophy, Champions League next year would be a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, because despite the starting 11 that he put out, I still trust the manager to spend money wisely. I still think he's the right man at the helm. And there is a philosophy and a style, and I can project forward and see Celtic playing like Bodo Glimt did last night, but even better, because they'll be able to afford more, higher quality players. I can see all that, and I think Ange can see that too. There's a frustration at the fact that, every rebuild takes time. I get that, but when you're Celtic, sometimes you don't have as much time, when he knows that himself. But you saw it in glimpses when it came together. The team that you could have and the way they play. Talk about like the first half against Rangers, that kind of stuff. It's pretty breathtaking to watch when it all clicks into gear. And so you imagine that starting 11 against Rangers, you imagine 3 or 4 more quality players on top of that, and you start to think, right, and that's how it came about during the O'Neill era. We went into the Champions League after winning the title. We beat Ajax in the qualifiers. You go into the group stage, you win your 3 home games against Juventus, Porto and Rosenborg, and you still get knocked out. But you think, okay, so we learn next time we have to take something on our travels. You become a better team. You lose to Basel in the Champions League qualifiers. You drop into the UEFA Cup. And then from then on, in every game, they scored away from home on their travels, didn't they? The importance of being a team that can counter-attack and score away from home. And you learned that, very early on. So I may also mention that the one thing Ange will have done over the 2 legs against Bodo Glimt, he will have learned, because he's never by with learning, never done with learning, and he tells you himself these are the challenges that he relishes and he loves. So great, and I'm fully on board with that. I'm bitterly disappointed the way it ended last night, but I'm still on side with the manager in terms of the rebuild and where we are, and there is perspective here. We're picking over the bones of another disappointing European exit. Yeah, there's negativity, for want of a better word, but I still lots to be positive about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's only going to be positive if the manager's allowed to do these things that you're saying, spend that kind of money on those players in the summer to help transform Celtic if they win the title. But we're certainly well ahead of progress. We're well ahead of schedule where I thought we would be. And the problem now is that if they don't win the title, it's going to be another crushing disappointment, isn't it?
I can't even think about it, Tony. Can't even think about it. I'm going to bring in a few of these comments that are coming through. Just on one of the points, we do subscriber-only comments on a daily basis, so it's nothing to do with the score. That's what we do, unless my comrade Kelvin isn't in the studio, because I don't know how to do it, but we do it every single day. So it's nothing to do with last night's result. Because to be honest with you, I'm all about a Celtic state of mind. And if anybody wants to watch the programme, they don't have that. I'm not really that interested in them coming on with the comments. But on that point, Tony, in relation to the fact that Rangers have progressed, let's talk about how that may benefit Celtic. And I was thinking this morning, not by design, but it's where we are this Friday afternoon. Celtic are out of Europe, Rangers are still in Europe. Right, so you've got initially, right, so there's 2 games extra that they're going to have to play midweek. And on those 2 evenings that they play, the following game will be on the Sunday. Celtics will revert back to the Saturday in most cases. What kind of benefit? Psychological? Get the points on the boards a day in advance?
it's only beneficial if you win. It's like Sunday, isn't it? Celtic are the early kickoff, so it's only beneficial if you go 6 points ahead, temporarily, albeit. But you have to do that. Rangers dropped points on Sunday. Celtic took advantage by beating Dundee to go 3 points ahead, and have that breathing space for the first time this season. So the benefits are only there if you keep up your end of the bargain. That's the whole point, isn't it? And you take these opportunities when you have the chance to apply pressure. You have to grab them. We are now 11 games to go. Every game's now is a pressure situation. It's going to be torture, for want of a better expression. You said there you can't even contemplate the thought of not winning the title this season. So every weekend now is your strongest 11 that are fit, and you have to go for it now. You have to rip, roar, free score and never bore, as they say, like you've never done before. And I think Ange is quite well aware of that now, isn't he?
That was lyrical genius there, Tony.
I just came right. But you know what I mean. So we cannot allow the fact that Rangers are playing on Sundays. You have to concentrate on yourself, because you know fine well that if you don't take care of your own business first, when you have a chance to apply that pressure, then it'll be, as Jim said earlier in the sea, a heart attack football. So you have to look after yourself. But conversely, you've got to be really positive, thinking the situation that Ange and the team have manoeuvred themselves into.
Oh, yeah.
You've got so much to potentially look forward to. And you're trying to project to the end of May, and, you just don't want to envisage yourself being the title winners. But what are Celtic 9 wins away, I believe,
from winning the league,
from winning the title, and that's including beating Rangers at Ibrox, isn't it? So these are things you're going to have to embrace, going to have to get your head around, you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
And squad rotation for me at this particular time,
it ends now.
Well, to me, I would say I would never dream of telling the manager how to do his job, as he just turns around and tells the manager how to do his job. But you know what I mean? We have to play our strongest 11 if we can. And if guys are playing well and they're in possession of the yellow jersey, then you go with that, and you don't tinker too much, because we now realise that there's a league to be won here. We're in a fight, a dog fight for the title, and I think Ange's not a stupid man. He knows that too. So I'm sure he's made all sorts of plans for how he's going to take on the next 11 games of the season. But again, kudos to the fact that we're even talking like this, because this was supposed to be a rebuild and a write-off, and we were supposed to be nowhere near it. Are we disappointed in Europe? Yeah. Do we keep constantly being disappointed in Europe? Yeah. Do we yearn for the days when we become a force again? Yeah. Is the right man at the helm to lead us to that? I believe, yeah. And he has a vision for that. You can clearly see it. And I think, and I hate using these kind of stock phrases, but I think we do have to trust the process at this moment in time and take the rebuild bit by bit. But if you're asking me, do I like being out of European competition? No, I don't. I hate being out of European competition, because I want to see us get put out with a heavyweight, and we can turn around and say we lost to the best. Bodo Glimpt are good. They're a decent side. They might well go on and win the Europa Conference League. That's fair enough. But are they the best? No. Should Celtic be competing against them over 2 legs and not on the receiving end of a 5-1 aggregate? Yeah, they should.
Should Celtic be competing against Midtjylland, Ferencváros, Cluj, Athens, Malmo, Maribor, Legia Warsaw? Absolutely, 100%.
Of course. So I don't enjoy seeing Celtic being rolled over in Europe by anybody. If we get rolled over, then it has to be by the best, because then you hold your hands up and you say fine. And I think that's why I say go back to when you're talking about the likes of the Seville team. We took on the best and we were never rolled over.
No. absolutely not. I earlier was talking about being on an airplane, and I said liftoff. I was thinking about a spaceship or a rocket. It was actually takeoff that I was thinking about, Tony. So it comes to me eventually. We will be talking about what is the best 11, because last night, despite there being a weak inside out, we did start with O'Reilly and Rogic, and I've got my doubts about those two guys starting in the same team. I'm not sure if it works. We'll be talking about that. Paddy Lavery. Did Ange shaft the travelling support with his team selection last night? Well, Paddy, what we're going to do is the next time Tony is in the press conference, he's going to ask Ange that question on your behalf, and we'll see what the big fella says. And Lawrence McNeil, Ange has kicked the team's morale in the balls with that team selection and result last night. Do you think he has, Tony? Do you think we can pick ourselves up, dust ourselves down, play a stronger team on Sunday and get back to business?
He did it for a reason, didn't he? Let's be honest. He did it for a reason because he had one eye on Sunday, didn't he? But now the pendulum of pressure swings back to Ange and the team, because they now have to deliver on Sunday. And you've noticed a tapering off of the intensity since the Motherwell game. Rangers and Motherwell back-to-back performances were terrific. But since then, it's tapered off a bit, isn't it? It's not been as fluent, and it's not been as clean, and it's not been as emphatic as those two results back-to-back, Rangers and Motherwell, were. So, certain, people and fans are starting to get uptight, but they're getting uptight because they know what's at stake. So, if the manager had one eye on Sunday, and again, I get back to it, he would never ever admit it, but you can't tell me that he played that team without thinking that he thought that he had bigger domestic fish to fry and that they need to win this title. So Celtic now need to go out on Sunday and have a reaction to the Bodo Glimpt game, and a positive one at that. It can't be flat. It has to be kind of in the realms of the way they played against Rangers and Motherwell, or when they went to Easter Road before and Tom Rogic was pretty imperious for 40 minutes he was on the park. It has to be that kind of standard. They have to raise it again, because he said himself, nobody's going to hand you this title. You're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to earn it. So start on Sunday. The countdown takes you into the last 10 league games. So go do yourself a favour and get that breathing space of 6 before Rangers play Motherwell at Ibrox. Yeah, you don't expect anything from that, but you didn't expect anything at Tannadice last week. So it's just that opportunity that you have to apply some pressure every time you play before Rangers kick off. You have to take that, and that starts with beating Hibs on Sunday. Now,
there's a few predictions, as would be expected. Urban Coolsey 3-0 on Sunday. I'd be more than happy with that. Gary Lafferty, hard game, 3-1 to the Hoops. I'm at the stage where I'll take a 1-0 every day of the week going into these games. Big Ange's Beard points out 4th position in Saturday Christmas. That was what we were hearing. In some quarters, certainly not from ACSOM. I think as soon as Ange came in, it was a case of let's get people who are experts in Japanese football and Australian football, Tony, to come in and maybe educate us about Ange Postecoglou. That was really our priority when Ange was given a job. And I think that when Ange Postecoglou speaks, you listen. But this week, Tony's been telling us that it's half-time and we're going to go into this second leg, and then he plays a week inside. So I'm going to ask you a few of the dilemmas or some of the talking points, perhaps, about the selection on Sunday. And one of the points I made earlier was O'Reilly and Rogic. Now, I rate both of these players very highly. Are they losing a wee bit of their form in the last 3-4 games, perhaps? I don't want to be harsh on O'Reilly. He's a new player. I think he came in all guns blazing. He looked absolutely tremendous. Seems to have gone off the boil a wee bit. Rogic is a player that we've spoke about all season, Tony. Is it his best season? Well, last few games he's been off the boil also. Do you play them both again on Sunday?
No, you most certainly don't. I would be inclined to stick with Rogic, McGregor, and possibly Hatate in the midfield.
Yeah, I'd bring Hatate back. Yeah,
that's his energy. Mm-hmm. It's a toss-up between Rogic and O'Reilly. I would just give Rogic the nod, but O'Reilly's a able deputy to come on if he has to. But I think that's the two I would play alongside McGregor. my own thoughts. But I don't think Roderick and O'Reilly have covered themselves in glory playing together against Bodo. And first impressions last when you see these players together, isn't it? So everybody would be like, no, don't do that again. And when I get in, as we mentioned it earlier on, I don't know if he did it out of bloody mindedness or he did think that those were the two guys that could unlock the Bodo defence with a wee bit of guile, a bit of craft. That's fine. We'll never know because they didn't do it and Celtic lost. So, but I think I'd be more confident seeing them domestically together against somebody.
Yeah, at home.
Aye, Roderick and O'Reilly. But as experiments go in the European scene, it certainly didn't work. So I think he would think twice about doing it again in the next 11 games. Could be wrong in that. But
well, it was a similar discussion, Tony, to the Turnbull in Rogic's question, wasn't it? Leading up to Turnbull's injury. Are they as effective? Are they too similar in terms? Not so much in style, but just the areas of the park. I mean, you don't expect to see that transition occurring when an attack breaks down. You don't expect Rogic and Turnbull to be tracking back and going in for slide tackles on the halfway line. Do you see it from Hatate? Yes, you do. Hatate is that midfield player, that all-round combative midfield player. And I think you can get away with one type of player like that in a team. I'm not saying they're a luxury, but one type of player that might not be able... But what I noticed against Dundee and again last night is the pockets of space in the midfield that were wide open. And the minute your attack breaks down, you're wide open to that counter that we've seen in the first 10 minutes, which resulted in a 5v3 situation, and Joe Hart's not got a chance. He's not got a chance of standing up to that. This here, good point from Mark Tyler. Can we have more clean sheets, please? I think that is all dependent on what we were talking about earlier. A, that Cameron Carter-Vickers returns to the team. B, that Juranovic returns to the team. And then C, I didn't have a list when I started this question, but I've just devised it as I've gone through it, Tony. If that's the case, where does Juranovic play? Does he play right back? Does he play left back? Or do you bring back Greg Taylor?
I would, and I think every time Anthony Ralston plays in the team, he gives you a reason not to drop him, doesn't he?
I thought he was off it a wee bit last night. I thought he maybe picked up a knock, actually.
Yeah, but my caveat was last night, I didn't feel that about him. So I've got a feeling that Taylor will come back in and Juranovic will revert back to right back. But the one thing Ralston does give you, and I go back to the Dundee game last week, his delivery into the box is tailor-made for somebody like Giakoumakis. So there's all sorts of caveats with that one. His cross-in for Giakoumakis' header was brilliant. And he's did that a few times this season, contributing assists. And I think he's better in that than Taylor. But I just thought last night, as you say, he was off it a wee bit. So I think he might, again, if we believe that that's the strongest 11, then the strongest 11 will be players in their natural positions, wouldn't it? So that would find me to agree that Juranovic would revert back to right back, Taylor would come back in at left back, and it would be Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers at centre back, with those three in midfield. And up front, I think he would just, has to be Abada, Giakoumakis and Jota, doesn't it, for the time being? Yeah,
I think so. I think that I take into account everything surrounding Maeda's transfer, the fact that he's played a lot of football before he comes to Celtic, Tony. Then he's had to travel to the other side of the world, come back and play a game, 2 days later or a day and a half later. I get all that. But I'm at the stage now where I'm looking at Maeda and I'm wondering what it is he brings to the side. I know that, he had a great assist against Dundee for the second goal. He's got pace, but, I'm not sure how effective he's been in the appearances that he's had. And I certainly don't think that he's effective on the left-hand side of that front three.
Well, what I will say about Maeda, I think he takes up some wonderful positions, but he needs certain players to be tuned into that wavelength to pick him out. And again, going back to quality players, you're needing a Jota to find Kyogo type pass, remember, for the goal in Ferencváros. You're needing people like that to be scanning all the time, because Maeda's on the move all the time. And it's not his fault that we maybe lack that quality that can pick him out each time he does it, because he
we've not seen Kyogo and Maeda in the same team.
Yeah, so I would cut him some slack just now, because he has played a full season and he was the top scorer in Japan, the J League. So he has qualities and attributes there. And again, like Giakoumakis, maybe just taking a wee bit of time to find his feet. He got off to a flyer against Hibs by scoring after 5 minutes, and hey, the new Kyogo, new wonder striker and all that, So I think we can. I like his work ethic. I like what he brings to the team in that sense. I think he's very Kyogo-like in that way. He never give defenders peace. But I just think at this minute in time, if you're talking about strikers, then it's the goals ratio, isn't it? And Giakoumakis is far more productive in terms of the goals ratio than Maeda is at the minute. And that's not to say Maeda won't come good. But I just think a lot of those things taken into consideration, that Giakoumakis just now gets the nod for the starting centre forward with Jota and Abada either side, and Maeda can come on for Giakoumakis later on and maybe use that pace to stretch people and get in behind if the game is suitably won.
Poised, yeah, absolutely. When earlier on I was talking about get Carter-Vickers and get Jota, and then maybe 3 or 4 others will be required. Final pieces of that jigsaw, Tony. Is one of those pieces of the jigsaw centre forward for you? We know that Kyogo's the gold standard, right? He's the first pick every day of the week when fit. Underneath that, we have Giakoumakis and Maeda, who we expect to be permanently signed at the end of his loan deal. Do we have enough quality? Because there's certain areas of the park where there's a drop-off in quality once you dig into the second choice. Are you quite happy with the kind of second-tier centre-forwards as it stands, Maeda and Giakoumakis?
You can't get enough good footballers in your team, Paul. So if we need another good centre-forward and one becomes available, a good striker, I'm all for that. Is that just G's everybody up? And then you have 4 guys competing for 2 places, and they know the bar that they have to reach and the heights that that are set to be a regular in the team. So I wouldn't be averse to bringing in another quality hitman if that's the case. And that's no slight on Maeda or Giakoumakis. I just like that healthy competition for places, and I think the manager does too. So I wouldn't be, as I say, I wouldn't be averse to bringing in another striker of quality.
No, absolutely. John Francis Fratati, welcome back to the show. Loved Actoon Baby, by the way. Great Avatar. Favourite U2 album of all time. Featuring, of course, one of the best singles that U2 ever released. John reminds us that he played a worse team against Betis than he did last night, with players like Bain, Soro, Urigide, Henderson, Ayeti, to name but a few. Good point. I was surprised that night that we got a result with that lineup.
But so did Betis, did they not?
Were they under strength that night as well?
I think they played a shadow team as well with a couple of notable players. But the Celtic team that played against Betis, overperformed, probably overachieved that night, but it still got a good result. But they gave it their all, didn't they? I didn't see that from that Celtic. That's the point I'm making, that the guys that came in didn't. That wasn't a Celtic team pushing to overturn a 2-goal deficit. It was a Celtic team that just went out there to play 90 minutes and whatever happened. And then your game plan was stuck after 7 minutes. So that the Celtic Betis game was different in the sense. I think that was the last game of the Europa League section, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was more of a dead rubber, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, but they still went out and played for pride and points, and they got a result. But the guys that came in showed that they wanted it and gave their all. I didn't see that from Celtic last night. And I agree with Aaron, their squad depth's still an issue.
It is. It's an issue when you get to that. You're playing guys like, and it's not pinpointing any individuals, but you're playing your second choice centre half, your second choice left back, and there's that drop in quality, Tony, and we've spoke about it quite a few times. Brian also comes in. Brian Walsh, welcome to the show, Brian. You can't play the fast and furious style of football in Europe. You need tactical nous and ability to press opponents high up the pitch, and no shortage of physicality. Bodo Glimt did it impeccably. I think they did. And by the way, I think Bodo Glimt have lost about 4 players since that famous result at home against Roma as well. They've lost a few players, Tony, but they have a game plan that, continues to thrive.
They've been building that for 3 years.
Yeah.
So Ange is 8 months into the rebuild. We've said that. We've touched upon that this has been 3 or 4 years in the making. And despite the fact that they lost 4 players, they had players to come in because they were all familiar with the system. And that's what I'm saying, that Ange is projecting ahead and looking at Bodo Glimt and saying that's the kind of football that Celtic want to play further down the line. Or he's certainly setting these teams up to play, hopefully. But they want to be even more clinical and better than Bodo Glimt, and sharper and faster and bigger and stronger and better. So I'll go back to it that we said that was that kind of through the looking glass thing. So I firmly believe that's where he wants to take this Celtic team, because that he wants to make his name in Europe. So results like this are, he's not going to be happy with them, obviously.
No.
So and quite right, he shouldn't be. So, and I'm happy that he's not happy with it.
When will he be happy? What levels do we need to get to make Ange Postecoglou happy, Tony?
Well, when we're in the Champions League group stages and you might qualify for the last 16, I think he might smile then.
Shane Southdean, you certainly are joining us late, Shane. But whilst you're on YouTube, make sure that you like the video. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Today's show, in actual fact, was exclusively going out on YouTube. We didn't put it out on Twitter or Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch and various other, is it on TikTok yet? I don't know. Various other social media platforms. It was on YouTube only. We have built up a great community of viewers who are all about a Celtic state of mind. It's been a fascinating discussion once again with Tony Haggerty. I always enjoy it. Remember to subscribe, because tomorrow at 12:30 we have our video feature of St Mary's. Tony, we went down and presented Canon Tom Mike with the big cheque. It was about 29 grand. Thank you to everybody who got involved and who donated. Tonight we have a compilation. It's kind of like a Jules Holland style compilation of our sessions from 2021. You can enjoy that at 8 o'clock tonight, and tomorrow night. Can I just prepare you for our latest session with a Dunfermline band called Twinstown, Tony? How would you describe them? How would you describe them, Stuart? Twinstown, they're kind of like an indie Daft Punk. So there you go. Get involved at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Get involved in that one as well. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. We continue to enjoy the discussion on a daily basis, and we're looking forward to Sunday. Hopefully, you can join us then on the Celtic State of Mind. Thank you, Tony Haggerty, for joining me on the ACSOM Bulletin, sir.